Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Rita Borenstein and I'm located in Stockholm, Sweden. The theme of my channel is Passion for the Soul and the name is Rita Borenstein, the same as my name. Here I record videos based on my work as Life Between Life facilitator here in Sweden since 10 years back. I also interview guests. Some of my videos are in Swedish and some are in English. Today I'm going to talk about my 10 years as Life Between Life's facilitator here in Sweden. I'm still the only member of the Michael Newton Institute who is certified in the Institute as a Life Between Life facilitator. So what is Life Between Life hypnotherapy then? Well, it's based on the life work of Dr. Michael Newton, who was born 1931 and who passed 2016. We have an institute called the Michael Newton Institute with about 200 members. And when I certified, I had trained with Life Between Life facilitator and hypnotherapist Paul Laurent and his team. And since then, I've been working with Life Between Life hypnotherapy and also writing books. And I publish the Swedish version of the books by Dr. Michael Newton. He wrote Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls, and also a book called Life Between Life Hypnotherapy for Spiritual Regression. And Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls were already translated by a lady called Kerstin Kennedy. And when I got the permission from Levelin Publishing to again publish Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls in Swedish, I was privileged by the daughter of Kerstin Kennedy, Anna Kennedy, to use the translation that her mother so wonderfully and thoroughly made. So since a couple of years, these books are of Michael Newton are again available in Swedish. I also wrote 2 books about my work with Life Between Life hypnotherapy here in Sweden, and they are in English and in Swedish. And the English name of my first book is To Soul, Home and Back, about Life Between Life hypnotherapy for spiritual regression. And the second book, my second book, is called My Soul is a Diamond. Now I'm going to tell you more about Life Between Life hypnotherapy. And I still do lots of these sessions here in Sweden on almost a daily basis. And I do a lot of other sessions too. And I call them healing hypnosis, which is a kind of spiritual hypnosis and not oriented towards the Life Between Life kind of session that is the Michael Newton way. So today I'm going to talk about what a Life Between Life session basically is all about. Yeah, so what it's all about is to get in touch with one's own soul. And I call a Life Between Life facilitator for the simple reason that I'm not the therapist for the client, but I work as a team member with the client, the soul of the client, the guide and helpers from the spiritual side of the client, and also my guides and helpers. So it is a totally different kind of work than when I used to be a nurse, a registered nurse here in Sweden since 1979. And then I was also an acupuncture, Chinese medicine therapist, and an osteopath DO. So I trained in many different healing modalities, but when I did my first Life Between Life session in the training by Michael Newton Institute in 2012, I was so fascinated by this kind of hypnotherapy that I went all in for it and became a kind of ambassador here in Sweden with all my lectures, books, and tons of sessions. So it's a way to get in touch with one's own soul, and how hypnotherapy is a wonderful way to go into deep relaxation, like in meditation and in other ways, to deeply relax. And I, as a facilitator, help the client in the first stages. First, we, of course, have a pre-talk, and I do some other preparations with my clients on the phone too, and with a form and letters. So we then, when the client comes, we do a deep relaxation after the pre-talk, and this is to get in touch with the relaxation of the body, and also to feel safe and secure, and in so many ways relax and start going deeper. And then to get in touch with the own soul goes in stages. Some people already are in touch with themselves on a deeper level when they come. So this is totally unique and personal journey, of course, starting from the abilities and a level of maturity of the client from the start. And I, as a facilitator, accommodate to the unique quality of the client. And this is based on my own experience from at least 8 Life Between Life sessions myself with talented colleagues, and also tons and tons of past life regressions and other kind of personal developing ways as a person and as a soul. So we start the session and we go deeper. The client goes into a hypnotic state by me helping. I'm doing a verbal preparation for the client, to talk with the client using my voice, to soothe and to help them relax on many levels, in the body, mentally, emotionally, and in all sorts of ways. Then Michael Newton had this way to call it warming up by going through early childhood memories using a staircase symbolism to go to the early years and to build resources by remembering positive, neutral, or happy memories. And he found out that going to these kind of happy memories or neutral, nice childhood memories builds resources for the clients to go even deeper. So I use the same way, and some of the clients still go to painful childhood memories, but then we use it as a healing and to go into a safe place, as we call it, to heal these memories, as the memories are energetic, are stored in the energetic vibration of the client, so everything can be healed if the client is ready and if it's possible. But we do the warming up, then go into early memories based on the Michael Newton methodology, and then we go to the time in the mother's womb, which is truly interesting and hard to grasp how it's possible. But my first regression to the womb took place during the training in the Michael Newton Institute, and I was in touch with my soul somehow, hard to explain how it feels, but I could sense my mother. I could sense her state of mind and emotional state, and some things I knew, of course, but it was deeply healing to be in touch with such a early stage of my incarnation as Rita. Then the next stage is then starting, and this is based on the childhood memories and also the time in the mother's womb, which is then quite mind-blowing for the client to experience if it's authentic. And it's authentic if the client subjectively feel and sense and bodily have a sensation of being deeply relaxed, and also having a subjective sensation being in childhood and being in the mother's womb. This is all what it takes to call it authentic then, because nobody can judge. But I have, through all these sessions, learned what it feels like also when my client is having an authentic experience, which I then support and ask more of for the clients to learn then during these stages. So we continue then the so-called warming up, as Michael Newton called it, to go to a deeper soul state. Then comes the phase go into a past life, which is something that most of my clients who do a life between life session already experienced, because based on the work by Michael Newton, it's very good to have this kind of experience under the belt, because then you know what it feels like to experience past life, and then it comes as no surprise when you, after the going down the staircase to the early memories, to the time in the womb, then going into a past life, and there are so many different past lives. So the soul usually, as far as I understand, chooses the most perfect past life memory for the client in the moment, and what we are going to investigate and figure out for the client. So more often than not, the client goes into a past life, and we enter somewhere during that life, and we then go not as fast as possible, but the intention in this kind of session is to go to the death moment, which is when the client then passes over into afterlife, and this is when the life between life session basically kicks off. So we want to know what happens after a life, and this goes from a past life then, because obviously my client is still alive and so am I, so we cannot go to afterlife through a present life in that sense, but we can access so-called near-death experience through this kind of hypnotherapy, which we in the Michael Newton Institute often compare it with, or it's a kind of near-death experience, but in a safe way, with a trained life between lives facilitator sitting beside you, or if it's online, being there with you, and then to know what it's like to die. And I myself have done it many times in life between life sessions, and surprisingly, it's not scary. It's most of the time just a release and a wonderful experience to leave this body behind and then go into soul home, as you can call it. So my own experience is going to soul home helps me to facilitate these sessions, because I can only be there with my soul and with my passion and all who I am. So it doesn't help if I'm a so-called skilled therapist or something like that. It helps if I am, because I have a lot of experience. But what is a skilled hypnotherapist, it's someone who can be in the present and be there for the client and also be authentic myself. So then the life between life journey starts after a death in a past life. And if I just tell you based on the Michael Newton methodology, most often then there is a stillness and a time of transition. So most clients then wait somehow. It's a kind of state where you wait to see. And when you're deeply hypnotized, there is no sense of time. So the waiting is not sitting and let's see what happens, but to be still and to know and to feel and to be open for what happens. So sometimes fear kicks in, or the mental mind of the client kicks in, and then, well, it's difficult then to proceed. So sometimes I then ask, do you sense someone helping you? Do you feel someone that could be a guide or someone or a team who would help the client to, we would check then what kind of fear it is. And it could be also that the body of the client gets fidgety or nervous or something like that. And that could be somehow obstacles then to proceed, and it happens, and I cannot force the client then in any way, but usually that session then becomes a so-called healing session where we can then check the on another level the fears of the client, to go deeper and to receive this kind of help from the team, their team or their guides. I have noticed through many sessions like that these are people who have are very capable and they are used to doing everything themselves, so they are not open to my help or help from guides either. They could be CAOs, they could be teachers, doctors, nurses, and all sorts of professions and people who find it quite scary to not know, and not to know what will happen now after I die from this past life. Let's see, something like that. So then the healing session could possibly then, not always, but could open a way for the client to heal some things that prevent their development as a person and a soul. So it somehow has an inner wisdom, these kind of sessions, to take the client wherever needed somehow. So I just trust this process and I never force anything. But if it goes according to the book, so to speak, of Michael Newton, then we then sometimes a guide comes and picks the client up, or not the client, of course, but the soul. One could say it's difficult with terminology in this sense, because it's like a dream, it's a bit floating, but help kicks in, or the client says, I know the way myself, I've done many times, and this is nothing new to me, so now I know, and I think I need to rest. So then what Michael Newton called the healing shower, or the healing place, or a place to rest comes. And it could be that my client lived a life, for example, I had a life which I wrote about in my first book, The Soul Home and Back, when I was a doctor, a female doctor, an obstetrician in Vienna, in the millennium 1819. And I worked myself to death, basically, delivering children all night and all day long. So I died pretty young, and I died in the hospital where I was working from tuberculosis or something like that. And it was quite a relief to leave that body behind. And my own experience when I died in the past life, that was I just went out of my head. Sometimes I experience when I go out from my heart or from my throat or from my stomach. and I go into a soul state then. This time it's the client who then willingly, most often, leaves a body behind, the past life body behind, and it could be a death through trauma, being killed or killing oneself, or dying from old age or from disease, as a child, as a young person, as an old person, all sorts of things. And this has meaning later on, where we do a debriefing from the past life, either through with the guide or a soul team or other helpers, or then which will be revealed when we carry on after the healing process. So these take many different ways, these healing possibilities for a soul after a life. But most often then the client says, I'm ready now to carry on. And I ask, okay, ask your guide where you want to go, or if there's a team already, or if someone who came to meet the client then stays and someone else comes. These are spiritual helpers, but I always ask the client, who are these? Because I never presume anything based on Michael Newton book or anything like that, but I ask. This is basically the Michael Newton way, to keep on asking. So I feel like I'm new every time with my client, like coming from another planet or something like that, but human, of course, and warm and supportive. But I ask always to know, because otherwise I will maybe I need to ask open questions, basically, not to lead the client into anything that is not meant to be. So then the client, if we go now based on the Michael Newton methodology, difficult word in English, the client then could go into some kind of landscape, which could be a field or a forest or something like that in the nature. And Michael Newton explained it, why a client goes into something which is so look-alike, like on Earth. If the client goes to scenery which is like on Earth, some clients go to other sceneries too, which could be like on another planet or something like that. But most often it's a field, or as I said before, and that is because the human mind of the person who is in hypnosis needs to frame it somehow to make it understandable, because still the client is a person and has a brain, or the brain has a person. So the worldview and the lifespan and also past lives make up the scenery, just like in dreams. Why do we dream about landscapes and people and all sorts of things? It's the same phenomena, because we need to grasp it somehow. So if the client, for example, goes into to a garden, I ask the guide of the client, the guide of the client through the client. It's always the client who speaks, and the guide speaks through the client then, because otherwise it wouldn't work. So mentally, then the client would sort it out somehow, or emotionally, and to explain to me why this garden. And maybe the client, for the client, the garden symbolizes relaxation, no demands, just to heal. And I want to sit here on a bench with my guide and talk about my past life, how it was, and why, and this or that. And I usually ask, tell me, what was the meaning of this past life? Could you ask your guide? And then maybe it was all about understanding love, or understanding suffering, or being this way or the other. So I start asking the questions from the client, who the client always brings questions to the session. So I take the opportunity along the way to ask a question. And this is why this kind of session is quite long. It could be 3 or 4 hours long, this kind of session. It's because now when the journey starts into the afterlife, this client has no cessation of time, of place. We go into a garden, we go into maybe some other sceneries, and this takes clock time. So that's why these sessions are super, super long, or longer than other kind of hypnotherapy sessions. Well, now maybe we have already spent a couple of hours or maybe 2.5 hours coming this far, and the client is then deeply relaxed. And then I might ask then, after sitting in the garden for a while, not always all clients go to a garden, of course, but I take an example. And then the guide might say, no, let's continue, let's meet your soul group. And then we go meet some clients, just sense them or feel them as light dots or something like that. And you can read the books by Dr. Michael Newton if you want to know more about soul groups. These are the souls who are somehow connected to the soul of the client who I do the session with. And this is quite physical in the session for the client, strangely enough. So when I met my soul group first time, I did in my first session in the training in the Michael Newton Institute, we met in a library. Maybe it's because I'm very interested in books, and I could figure out a relationship with a partner who I had some kind of inner problems with, and because it wouldn't end and it wouldn't start, so it was hard. And I wanted to figure out what my soul agreement with that soul was, and I did figure it out. So that was a great help, and I could just release my bond with that person. And then after the session, it actually then was quite a relief. That was the end of that relationship. Then quite a relief, but because it didn't go anywhere, and it wasn't meant to be. So this is just an example to give you an idea, because the questions could be quite practical that you ask the so-called soul group. Another interesting thing then is that after a meeting with the soul group, it could be usually by the end of the session that a client from the guide get a suggestion or a pull to meet a group of souls who seem to be more advanced, who do not incarnate anymore, as it seems. I call them the elders, or the group of elders, or the wise ones, or there are many, many names. But Michael Newton also writes a lot about these in his books. And I still meet my group of elders sometimes, and these since I've done so many sessions, I can just ask when I'm in my sofa, deeply relaxed by myself, if I could get access to my elders. And this is I don't do this so often, but when I'm depressed or feel that I don't get anywhere, my life feels stuck, then I ask if I can get a meeting with my elders. And I met them the first time when I had my first Life Between Life session, also in my training. And I met them as men only. These days, there are some female characters in there, and these days I always meet them in a library. Again, the library seems to be my somehow spiritual scenery. I just love libraries and books, so usually they're not very talkative, but I can ask, and usually they tell me not what to do, but they give me perspective, and they give me something that usually soothes my personality and seems my soul too. So I then can proceed into whatever it is that I, as a person in a incarnation as Rita, feel just tired and depressed and don't sense any meaning of anything from time to time. But then I have learned that this is always before something new comes into my life, and never to give up, even though it could be, like I sense in many clients, a little bit dark from time to time and depressive because the world is full of suffering and all that. Then sometimes after this kind of meeting with a team, with my soul team or my elders, I can see the butterflies again and the birds. I hear their songs, and I come back to a color movie again, from living in a black and white sensation. So it changes all the time, and this is to me the beauty of this kind of session, because you just enter from where you are and you come out of it transformed and somehow amazed by what's inside of yourself. And some clients go to other sceneries, and by the end of the session, sometimes, not too often these days, but we go to what Michael Newton called the Ring of Destiny, which is all about why I chose my present incarnation as Rita, and all sorts of things about that. And that's truly amazing, because when I whine and feel depressed, I'm then thinking, okay, maybe I chose this experience on some level, and maybe I can change it too, because I learned over the years that my inner reflects the outer, and the outer reflects the inner. So in spiritual alchemy, everything is already somehow orchestrated. It's not the experience, but how I experience it, and how I interpret my own experience. So my life could be a terrible, sad life, or it could be an opportunity to be incarnated in this time and to go through all these experiences I go through. So then usually the session then ends, and the client feels relaxed still, and most of the time happy to be back. And I remember after my first Life Between Life session, I was eager to go back to Sweden and start working, because the information I got from my elders then was, I wanted to know, should I just leave being a nurse, and working as a nurse, not being a nurse, but working as a nurse, and working as an osteopath behind, and just go all in for Life Between Life session? And the answer was yes. But it was not my team who told me, but they told me it could be a great opportunity, but you can choose yourself, or you can do both. But it was not possible to do both, because if I would have worked as an osteopath with cranial osteopathy and also with this, I would have been burned out many times more, which I was also in the beginning, because I thought I could work as before, working with these sessions. But I realized that it's such a high pitch soul energy in being a Life Between Life facilitator based on the Michael Newton work. So my main focus is to take care of myself. I live in the countryside, and I do only one session a day, and take a lot of days off. In the beginning, I had to take weeks off between sessions, because it is not difficult in such, but it takes a lot of soul energy to be in a teamwork with guides and elders, and to be authentic and not to try to please the client as some kind of therapist or something like that. So that is why I choose the clients I do sessions with. not to if they are good or bad or anything like that, but I try to sense their maturity as a person and a soul to take full responsibility of their session. And I can only come 100% from my perspective, and they come 100% from their perspective as far as they know. And I do sessions online also with people in other countries. I only do sessions in Swedish and English, although I was born in Finland. I don't know Finnish well enough anymore. And I studied German too, and also Hebrew, but not good enough for doing sessions. So it's basically English then. All right, then. Now I hope I gave you an impression of what Life Between Life hypnotherapy somehow is all about, from my perspective at least. And if you enter the webpage of Mike Newton Institute, it's newtoninstitute.org. You can find my colleagues there in many, many countries and doing sessions in many languages. So I hope then you find someone who suits your energy and who you are attracted to, and well, feel that you could trust. Right. Okay. So you're welcome to contact me by email, or maybe give a comment under the video here. And I wish you a nice time in your life, and hope you enjoyed my video, and I welcome you to subscribe if you found this interesting, so it helps the algorithms to spread my videos globally too. Okay, bye-bye for now. Take care.